The wind that morning sighed low through the cottonwoods, as if the land itself was too tired to raise its voice. Dust moved in soft spirals across the open yard of Willow's End auction, curling around boot heels and bare hooves like old secrets stirring from the past. Horses shifted restlessly in their pens, their flanks twitching with flies and knowing. And amid the rustle of hay and sun-bleached leather, Bo Carter leaned against the far fence, a quiet shape in the heat-hazed light. He wasn't there to buy. Not really. Not since the year he'd dug a grave for the only woman who ever made him laugh without shame. She died 2 winters back, fever stealing her breath in the night like a thief who knew she was too gentle to fight. Bo hadn't spoken much since. The townsfolk said the widower Cowboy had gone hollow inside. But something in him still walked the living side of the earth, and it was that thin tether of habit that brought him to the auction yard. To stand with his hat low, letting the bray of horses and the earthy smell of sun-warmed hides remind him he still had skin. Then he saw her. She was standing near the stock rail, alone in a crowd that never stopped watching her. Annie Mae Tiller. 32, round in frame, stubborn in spirit. She wore a pale cotton dress that didn't hide what others liked to mock. Wide hips, soft belly, arms freckled like dappled cream. The women whispered behind their fans, and the men smirked with the sharpness of cruelty masked as jest. Bo had seen it before, how the town measured people like cattle, weighed them in judgments and sold them by shame. Annie held a small purse against her chest, fingers white from squeezing it. She looked not at the crowd, but at a dapple-gray mule in the pen, ears twitching toward her like it knew her heart. Bo's brow furrowed. That mule wasn't much, bony, old in the eyes, but Annie looked at it like it might walk her toward something worth waking up for. Then came Horace Finch. Red-faced and bloated with pride, Horace walked like a man who owned every breath in town. He'd made his fortune in livestock and bullying, and folks let him. Maybe because he was big. Maybe because no one ever stopped him. That day he strutted into the auction yard like it was his wedding and all of them were guests to witness his ego. He saw Annie and laughed. Now what in God's name do we have here? Horace's voice rang out like a gunshot that didn't deserve a bullet. Gonna ride that mule, are ye, Annie? Or make it haul that kitchen of yours? The laughter was slow at first, then picked up like kindling catching flame. Even the auctioneer paused, looking down like he didn't want to get caught between the two. Annie didn't move. Her jaw tightened, eyes forward, as if the mule were the only living thing that saw her without judgment. Horace wasn't done. He stepped closer, too close, shadow falling across her. You deaf now? I asked you a question, girl. Bo straightened, hands curling around the rail. Annie turned her head just enough to say, low and clear, I'm here to bid, same as you. Well, ain't that something? Horace sneered. You planning to feed it pies or train it to roll over? A few chuckles rang out again, brittle and sharp. Annie didn't answer. She stepped forward, purse still clutched, voice a whisper meant only for the mule. Don't worry, sugar. We'll get through this. Then it happened. Horace's boot swung, not high, not hard, but mean. It caught her behind the knee. She didn't cry out. She just crumpled, basket falling from her hand, silver coins scattering like hail on hard-pan dirt. Laughter exploded. Bo moved before his mind caught up. He was at her side in 3 long strides, boots kicking up a soft storm. The laughter stilled. His presence turned heads like a sudden storm cloud on a dry day. Horace stepped back, face twitching, unsure if Bo meant to fight. But Bo didn't throw a punch. He knelt beside her. Carefully. As if she were something breakable and sacred all at once. Annie tried to rise, one arm bracing against the dirt, but he put a hand on hers, steady, warm, not pressing, just offering. Easy, he said, voice like weathered timber. Ain't no rush to stand for men who can't stand themselves. Annie blinked and for a breath too long didn't move. Then she nodded. Bo gathered her basket. Picked up every silver coin, even the ones that rolled into shadows. Not like a man doing a favor, but like one returning what never should have been lost. He placed them back into her trembling hands. Then, with a quiet firmness that hushed the crowd more than any yell could, he reached into his own coat pocket. Pulled out a single silver eagle. Placed it on top. Finish what you came here to do, he said. He didn't wait for a thank you. Didn't spare Horace a glance. Just turned and walked back to the far fence, hands in his pockets like nothing had happened. But something had. The auctioneer cleared his throat, unsure if business should resume. Horace muttered a curse and stalked off toward the whiskey tent. And Annie stood slowly, dust clinging to her knees, her coin purse now heavier by one. She bid on the mule. And she won. That evening, Bo sat on the back porch of his weathered cabin, watching the sun sink low behind the hills. The mule, now tied gently to the post out front, munched contentedly. Annie stood beside it, holding a tin bucket of feed like she was born to. She'd shown up at his place not long after the auction, mule in tow. "I owe you," she said. "Let me clean your place. Pay it back honest." He'd simply nodded. There was dust on the floors and silence in the air. A woman's footsteps sounded good again. Inside she swept. Outside he chopped wood. Two people doing old chores in a world too fast to notice kindness anymore. When they sat down later, two chipped mugs between them, the stars were beginning to come out, first in singles, then in sudden bursts. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Annie said. Bo sipped, looked toward the mule. "You didn't fall, 'cause you were weak," he said. "You fell, 'cause a fool tried to knock down something stronger than him." Annie smiled, but her eyes stayed cautious. "People don't usually say that." Bo didn't answer. Instead, he reached down and set a lantern on the porch rail. Let it burn soft against the night. "For what's it worth," he said after a long moment, "I think that mule saw something in you. That's why it came to the rail. Animals know." Annie tilted her head, a little laugh escaping. "That right?" He looked at her, then really looked. "So do men sometimes. If they ain't too broke to see straight." Silence settled in again, not awkward, just wide and warm. The kind that stretched its arms out between them and said, "You're safe here." The next few days unfolded like pages in a slow-turning book. Annie came back with food, fixed the torn curtain, taught the mule to respond to her whistle. Bo found himself carving a stool for her from old cedar. No declarations. Just gestures. Quiet grace handed back and forth like a river smoothing stone. A week later, the town gathered at Rosa Lee's saloon for the monthly music night. Bo didn't go often. Too many voices. Too many eyes. But that night, he saddled up and rode slow with Annie behind him, her arms loose around his waist, not clutching, just resting. When they stepped through the doors, the music stopped. The laughter paused. She wore a blue dress Rosa Lee had given her, one that danced around her curves like it was made for moonlight. Bo kept his arm off her, didn't rush her. Horace was there, drink in hand. He sneered, but the room didn't follow his lead this time. Bo raised his glass. To the woman who stood back up. No cheers followed. Just silence. But it was the kind that hummed deep, the kind that changed people when it passed. Horace left before the music resumed. And he stayed. Later that night, on the same porch where the lantern still glowed, Bo asked why she hadn't left town after what happened. She looked out toward the hills. "Because someone helped me remember I had legs made for standing. Not hiding." He smiled, then just barely. "That mule's got a name yet?" She nodded. "Grace." The lantern flickered once in the wind, then steadied. And though the night deepened, neither of them moved to go inside. The stars above stretched out forever, and for once they didn't feel too far. And in that stillness, something unlabeled, unseen began to take root. Not love, not yet. But perhaps, its first brave breath.